stream. Today I have a special guest. Jake Brunn is here with me. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing well, Adam. How are you?
Not too
Thanks for having
bad.
me.
So, Jake has just started his new company about a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now,
Yeah.
doing event modeling and event sourcing. So,
Mhm.
out of Portland, Oregon. So, our neighbors to the south.
Yep.
Same time zone. It's so nice to have people in the same time zone to converse with. Not waking up at 6 a.m. or staying up till midnight.
Right.
Is always a good feeling
Right.
to have someone in your own time zone. And obviously in North America, we got lots of different time zones, and Europe and other places are far away from us. So anyway, Jake, awesome to see you get going and get started. So
Yeah.
maybe tell me how things have felt in the first week of going off and starting a consulting business in the brave new world of where things are going to be event sourcing and event modeling for the
Yeah.
industry.
It's been action packed this last month. I mean, I've done all of the paperwork. Now I'm working on putting together some content. That I've been putting out on LinkedIn. Done a few streams, but instantly kind of saw where I was lacking. So I got a green screen and putting together all of the goods to be like a
Yeah, you're
content.
looking good there, and the lighting too is there's a nice bright light now. I can
Yep.
see you better. Yeah, so all this stuff is good.
So we're
But
getting
it's
it.
not
We're
just for
getting it put
streaming, right?
together.
It's good for you. I mean, when you're running your own business, you got a ton of meetings with potential clients, and so it's not it's really just good to have that kind of setup anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So yeah, like now that I'm kind of on my own, now it's like the hunt to get client number one. And
Yeah.
that's definitely a challenge. But while I'm working on that, I'm also trying to do some event modeling and do it out in the public, like you've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, spread the knowledge and yeah, and just share with the world. Like this is what I want to do, and this is what I think can make software projects run a lot better.
Yeah, I think it helps that people see solutions evolve kind of in front of them. That's why
Yeah,
I like to stream. It's just that it's something that I would do anyway, even if I didn't have a business or whatever. I
yeah,
find this highly rewarding to design systems this way because it's so universally sort of understood what you're building and how the information travels through the system, and that ends up being a really good set of descriptors for the system, good requirements, good given when then criterias come out of it. So your specs, your user stories really are replaced by this really nice schematic. So yeah, I love doing that in the open as well because then people can kind of see what the thought process is. They don't just
hmm
have this polished presentation like look at the wonderful thing you'll have.
right,
They also get to see the day to day of what people think about when they're putting together a UI that's going to maybe send structure some data for a command, and then they have to you have to think out loud what your invariants are going to be, and like which screens are going to use this event later on. So you're going to have your state views that you're going to make, the green boxes, and yeah, and even like I mean, I've shown some concepts to do with event sourcing using that, so I think that's really helpful.
yeah,
I'm glad that you're doing that. I think more people should be doing event sourcing and event modeling streams so that people see the complete sort of software developer life cycle aspect that it's kind of encompassing. I think a
right,
lot of I know there's some very popular coding streamers. Um, I feel, and not to their fault. They concentrate on just here's some code to hack because it looks cool, and look how great this knowledge is of this API and this language and how I can use it.
sure,
That's great and all, but I think what needs to be kind of addressed and more type of content is to address like the whole picture. In other words, how are you doing your programming, but how is the effort coordinated to those that are going to be either telling you how to what they want, the people that are the product owners, stakeholders,
Sure.
whatever, that are going to describe what they want.
Yeah.
That's something
This is
that I don't think is often streamed about. Maybe there are streams on like the product side, people talking about agile things and some maybe other um, business side of things, but I rarely see the two together. Maybe the other place that I
yeah.
see it is like case tools or like low code, no code, drag and drop things, where someone's
Right.
trying to show some wonderful framework for drag and drop, tooling to make an application. And
Been a
then you're kind
while.
of missing like how the sausage is made magic, right? So I think we're kind of hitting this at the right level, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I've been on plenty of projects where, we have a backlog of tickets where they pretty much only have like the title line, and then it's up to the developer to go figure out, so where does the data come from?
Yeah. Well,
And then,
so
they
instead
spend
of
a
the
whole
AI
bunch of
hallucinating, they allow the developers to hallucinate.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sorry, I was
Um,
hallucinating. The problem is that you can fire someone for some trumped up
yeah,
charges, but you can't fire your AI. It's just a tool. Tells you something,
just
right?
just switch it to a different model.
Yeah, yeah, I'm firing this model. It's Claude, whatever,
Yeah,
3.7 now. Well, it's also failing. It's like maybe you should look within why why things are failing.
right?
So that's kind of
But,
funny.
when I first came across event modeling, I'd already been event sourcing for many years, but I always struggled to kind of promote event source systems to the business. I couldn't
Mhm.
cross that technological gap with them.
Yeah,
And then once I came across event modeling, it it kind of allowed me to describe that picture, to the business and say, you know, here's how we solve problems. You don't really need to understand how we go about building it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's
and it was then much easier to sell projects.
yeah. Event modeling kind of started from a number of efforts, knowing that a storyline is very powerful. So I was a big advocate of behavior-driven development and
Uh-huh.
specification by example to show, how humans like a story. If you hear a
Yeah.
story, you really remember it well. It's
Hmm.
got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you remember the important parts of it. And so I found that any of those efforts around behavior-driven development and specification by example really focused in on not branching and complex graphs, but something that has this beginning and end and tells something.
Right.
Human brains are built for that. They're not built to remember graphs. So that was a key, and then obviously that mapped so well with event sourcing because all you have is a stream of events, which is a story, and so now you can start to play around with example event streams to say, hey, this scenario kind of looks like these bunch of events on this, in this order, happening
Mhm.
over time, and then yeah, part of the event modeling sort of okay. Well, if that's really good, what other things are we missing here? Okay, well we have to kind of divide this up into tasks. We need to make sure that the UI is there and all sorts of other things. So that's where event modeling kind of started. Is that we needed not just that story piece, but we needed all supporting actors in it as well. So where is the designer gonna have input to what the screens look like along this? What's the user gonna be looking at while these events are happening, right?
Yeah.
So that's it naturally kind of evolved from that. It wasn't I never set out to publish anything on event modeling, but it organically grew from the natural needs of requiring to build software, and we just kept answering questions like, okay, well, we kind of want to know how the UI is going to look, and we kind of want to know, we do have branching, but where do we show that without losing the storyline? Okay, well, we can show that below, and it just kept evolving by
Yeah.
tearing down existing user story and user use case and Jira management systems, so ticket management systems and all those things. Saying, okay, let's see what we can do with that core story on there, and if we can append anything to the type of this document that we have, and that's where the mock-ups came in, and the system design from the perspective of subsystems. Okay, well that can be kind of easier to understand, kind of to have them in their own swim lanes to see where they live. That's sort of how
Yeah.
you have sequence diagrams in UML. Instead of
Mhm.
vertical, they're horizontal because it's a storyboard.
Yeah.
But that swim lane is kind of analogous to one of those vertical object timelines in a sequence diagram. But then the
Yeah.
sequence diagrams kind of lost their way from this behavior driven development because they ended up having branching on there, just so that they could be complete. But then you're losing the story, and they become graphs themselves, which makes it difficult to remember what's going on, and starts to get lost in a big mess of possibilities. Because once you have a decision tree higher up in your sequence diagram, it you have to
Yeah.
keep
Things
that
get
in
complicated.
mind while maybe you have even more branching further down, and it stops being useful. So I think, yeah, I don't know if you've ever used sequence diagrams before.
I have. I always thought they were the most useful
I
of
think that's like
many of the
70%
UML
of the
diagrams.
opinion out there. Yeah.
Um, that and I did some high level class diagrams that are good for communicating a little bit of information,
Yeah.
but
I always
really
found they
not.
were abandoned, right? All my
Yeah.
UML efforts were always abandoned. Just
Yep.
I didn't find that there was. I don't know if you had the same experience, but I didn't find that there was a lot of colleagues that were exactly at the same frame of mind as me, where they could jump in to help with the UML because they might have, had a different focus at that point in time.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of UML. Besides, I learned how to make those diagrams when I was in college. There was a focus on learning like the rational
Oh
tool
yeah,
set.
yeah, rational unified process,
Yeah,
the
there was a
rational
big focus
suite.
on that.
Yeah,
So we did some work
yeah.
there, but then once I got out into the real world, nobody used those tools.
Yeah. I think there was like best kind of efforts, like, oh, you're someone that's doing more at work, you're very conscientious, though. Those people ended up making those, and then the 9 to 5ers would just slog through the code and ignore anything in the UML. Yeah, like, whatever, I'm getting stuff done. I want to go home at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
You take your
Right.
UML diagrams and spend your evening doing that while I go play soccer.
Yeah.
Sad, but that's kind of how we had that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's an interesting history. So you worked with event sourcing before. Like, what year did you start with event sourcing?
Uh, I first came across it in I think 2014 or 2015. So I'm pretty late to the game. I think
That's
Greg.
actually not.
Um,
Uh, so we have comments on the live stream. It says UML sucks, documentation sucks, modeling is not writing
oh,
documentation.
I'm missing those.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. I mean, let's not. I get the sentiment because documentation does suck. Sometimes, like, your code comments suck as well because
Sure.
a lot of times they fall out of sync with the real implementation, and they end up being actually, um, you know, a source of problems because someone reads a comment and it's not really reflecting what the code does anymore, and so they may have a slight disposition or a wrong idea about the set of the code that they're trying to maintain, and then they're going to do something that's not going to have desirable effects. So yes, we've been there with documentation sucking, and I can continue. I can very easily jump on this bandwagon on hating on documentation and hating on UML, and UML sucks. Um, very easily, but it's for the wrong reasons. It's like, we started to disperse our effort into many things. And we can see this in the, I think the canonical example for for documentation sucking is the wiki at a company where
Yeah.
there's so many different pages for so many different things that
Yep.
you're always just using the search bar to find something. It's got some sort of hierarchy, but some things are up to date, some things aren't. And so the
Yep.
whole thing's just like got this huge risk of whatever you're looking at, unless you're really paying attention to the date that it was updated. But then you have to correlate that to the code. Is that as up
Yeah.
to date as this? Yeah, I have bad memories of best intentions at companies. And so what's sad is that there's so many people doing these good efforts, at least with a good heart, that like, hey, if I spend an extra 2 hours at the end of my day at work, and I've seen a lot of people do this, to update the wiki so that everyone can kind of understand what the system does. If we hire new people, they can go and we can just say, hey, read the wiki, and I have some get started pages in there. Inevitably, they fall out of sync, and I don't think I think it's really hard to have a unified front on that. So um, UML documentation doesn't suck. UML on its own doesn't suck. I think it's the fact that we don't have the space or the coordination and the convention to go back and forth and use these things actively as a core component of the software development lifecycle, that they get not updated, and they lie. But
Yeah.
I
I
love a good
mean,
sequence diagram. I think it's,
y-
if I'm looking at the, and there's a lot of parallels with event modeling. So you could say that UML, a sequence diagram, is modeling your solution. I can, I mean, I can do this for the project that we're going to be working on today together, at least for the one that I'm working on after we look at yours. That the way I handle errors to my custom error pages in my web application while doing event sourcing underneath, and a sequence diagram is a very good way to describe, the level at which all the HTTP level redirecting for errors is done versus the deeper level of where I'm coordinating getting back a valid event or throwing an error if there's an issue, or whether I'm showing state. That can be another object that's further along. And I think UML and the sequence diagram does a splendid job. I think it's a really good job, like to have that shown
yeah.
there, and I can I can express specific method calls, which I might want to, and especially if it's, that code's going to continue to run, and it's not going to change very much. So I don't mind having a UML diagram, a sequence diagram for some of the infrastructure in my event sourcing framework. But then I want to model the business logic with event modeling, because then it's a storyboard that everyone can understand,
Sure.
and I know that I'm not talking to a, a tech only audience. I can take
Right.
that event model to both developers and business people, and people can understand the flow of information and like what screens people are going to see at what different times. That's really,
And
really helpful. And so,
sorry, just for
yeah.
a second here. Like when I assume when you build a sequence diagram, Adam, uh, because you're strict like adherence to open closed, and you're not like refactoring old slices. You get
Yeah,
why?
well, I mean, there is no slice in the infrastructure. I mean, all
Sure.
slices use the same infrastructure. So in this case, when I'm redirecting to like an error page in my, you know, sort of custom adapter for how my application behaves, and it's using event sourcing underneath, the layer that's the infrastructure for how the web part of this application works, it's not going to change often. I mean, it's going to continue to just get posts and gets on the app layer. I mean, I'm using Express just
Yeah.
because it's easy. It's an old framework. It's easy to understand. Lots of example code for it,
Oh yeah.
and it's not a single page app, so we can interrogate entire requests and all that kind of stuff. Um, and so uh, yeah, that code, the infrastructure code, isn't meant to change often. So I'm not worried about putting a sequence diagram down, because it's not likely to be changed with the whims of the business changing their mind about features. And I think that's the beautiful thing about event sourcing is that those are kept very orthogonal to one another. In a traditional system, you may have a lot of spillover from someone giving you more requirements that actually impact your infrastructure stuff. So, your UML diagram that you made, your sequence diagram for how you handle, requests and displaying data, they might be subject to change based on the whims of the business. But in this case, I really want it to be stable. And so when I'm talking about the infrastructure work, I'm quite happy to use a UML diagram or any number of UML diagrams, probably mostly a sequence diagram or something.
Mhm.
And I mean, I could even have a technical event model if it helps people. But if I'm talking about method calls, I definitely don't want to push that into event modeling. I think that's that
Yeah,
implementation detail that we want to leave in the hands of just developers and just focus on the information flow to have a wider audience and to have that as a collaborative area for doing that. But in order for
agree.
this to not, back to the point why documentation sucks and all this modeling is not writing documentation. Yeah. I mean, you can be a stickler about that point, but I think there's an overlap. I mean, as you're modeling, you are documenting what you
Right.
want. I mean,
Yeah.
it is just we're trying to mince words about the meanings of these words, right? So,
Yeah. I would
um,
much rather draw diagrams on the event model than I would type mini paragraphs into a wiki.
yeah, no, I'm done with writing paragraphs in Jira. Like that's yeah,
They
use
just get
cases,
lost.
all that stuff. It's
Yeah.
just yeah. I mean, that's documentation too, right?
Yeah.
Your all that stuff. So you know, kind of drawing with what you're. I think the best way to describe the event model is really drawing what the end goal should be.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
it's hard to draw that from like just one diagram and have it like a static thing. You need that timeline, right? So the left to right on an event model kind of allows you to drop in to what each page is going to show. What well, the important pages at each point of the workflow are shown, and then of course the flow of information along the way. And your system's either going to behave that way or it's not. It's really key. So it's easy to push that as the source of your requirements, and I think that's the problem why that kind of been beating around the bush to get to this final point is that
Right.
if you're not using the diagram communicate, then it will go stale. And yes, the documentation will suck.
Yep.
But if you're using the diagram as a way to say, this is what I want, and at the same time, if you've succeeded in making the system do what you drew on the event model, then that becomes really reliable documentation,
Yeah.
not just a model, but also documentation of what currently is in the solution and how it's put together. So
Right.
yeah,
Documenting the solution is, and also even going a step further, with layering project management over top of it and keeping track.
yeah,
I know you do this. I mean, you keep track of, which slices have been implemented, uh,
yeah.
if they're in progress, if they're done.
Exactly. It's very easy to just show on the diagram, which pieces of the timeline have been implemented already and which
Yeah.
ones are being worked on right now. So I think our convention is just to put a yellow rectangle on because we have a black background. It could
Yeah.
be darker orange or something if you have a white background in Miro. Depends on what tool you choose. But
Yep.
yeah, the yellow rectangles over the entire vertical slice of that event model is what's in progress by someone. And usually that has their name there and that
Mhm.
it's in progress. And then when they're finished, they're colored green instead. And the ones
Yeah.
that are outstanding, we just don't put any boxes around them. I guess you could put like a thin uh, black outline on the ones you intend to do that no
Sure.
one's picked up yet. So you can make your own convention that mirrors, what you're currently doing in Jira or some other thing. But having it visually represented than just like a bunch of text and lines up and down, you visually can see that, oh, this part of the workflow is going to be implemented in the next sprint or whatever. So that's a lot more helpful. Yeah. Um,
Do you find in your projects that you still have to align to, I guess, sprints for the
Depends
clients
on
that you're
the,
working with?
yeah, I think we do in a lot of places because we find that agile is still prevalent in so many institutions. So we're not going to jump into an organization and make them drop agile across their 10 teams, and the company's been working this way for a number of years. um, the nice thing about event modeling, event sourcing, is that it fits any other paradigm.
Yeah.
Over time
Oh,
you figure out that you don't need a lot of those old paradigms, and you can start to just shed things. Like, we shed our stand-ups long ago because the development is so predictable that there's really no value gained. The blockers don't exist like they did before.
yep.
So there's no need for that kind of framework for communicating across how things are going. You get kind of an instant feedback as to where things are by just looking at the event model, because everyone is using that event model to coordinate their work, to specify new requirements, and all those other things that you do. So there's really no need to do that. And of course, our retrospectives gone the way of the dodo as well, because there's really not much to discuss at the end of. We're not improving the
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
every sprint now, or every 2 weeks, or whatever that is. We have a very dependable way of treating every slice kind of the same way.
Right.
And so those, not that we don't do retrospectives. I mean, if someone has a good idea, we just find that to have them regularly done is overkill. And if someone has a good idea, we can just kind of, make a small little workshop type of meeting where we're showing these ideas and working together through maybe how we can enhance the core framework underneath, or the libraries that we're using, or something, to improve future work. And so instead of a sprint, we have development efforts of what to release next. So we're no longer tied to like a 2 week, 3 week, 1 week, whatever your
Sure.
sprint length is. We're no longer tied to these artificial sort of imposed timelines, but instead we can say that, hey, when we're done this workflow, which comprises of these 15 slices on the event model, that's when we'll release the next version of the software. And that's a much nicer, more natural way of working, where the seams in your work are dictated by natural
Yeah.
places where there's a larger piece of functionality you can show and ship to your clients.
So I'm assuming that's how you're running the projects, but then still to align with your client's sprints and probably status reports for their project
Oh
management
yeah.
office. Still gotta
Yeah,
just
we definitely have to do that for a lot of clients.
yeah.
So, I mean, there's a small script you can write very quickly to take a Miro board, and I think Martin's done this. I'm not sure if he actually published the Jira integration or not, but I know that I don't think we've gone as far as actually getting the API to Jira and automating it, but you certainly could do it if you wanted to. As soon as a slice is finished, and you have a reference in that command handler to some Jira ticket, like
Yep.
usually you have like a 3-letter acronym for your project, dash 1092 or whatever the ticket is. If that's
Yep.
in there, you can call the Jira API to mark it as complete, move it to the column of complete or ready for QA, or whatever you have, whatever your client has for those columns. You can certainly automate that. But the nice thing is that you're now going to the model to see what's going on. But the rest of the company can continue to work to leverage Jira to whatever they want, whether they have automatic reports, burn down charts that get emailed out at the end of every sprint or every week or every day or whatever it is. That'll still work while people use the event model on the daily task. So
Yeah.
with AI to help you, integrating things together through the APIs is much simpler now. I mean, a bunch of Googling to see how Jira APIs work, and how the Miro API works. That was, that would burn a couple of days.
Yeah.
And
It's a
now
good
it's
thing
kind
that
of like right there
good
in
thing
your
you have
script.
access to Martin, because I know he's spent a lot of time, figuring out all the
Yeah, I
Miro
mean,
APIs.
we've done a bit. I mean, Martin's gone to like a level I haven't seen anyone go through automating Miro. Um, but I mean, I've played around with some Miro automation before, but just dabbled with it. enough to know some of the really crappy limitations, such as your searches in Miro are limited to 1,000 objects, and a lot of times a non-trivial event model or any other type of non-trivial diagram that you make in Miro, you're going to hit that limit of 1,000 objects pretty fast.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one of their ways of encouraging people to have multiple diagrams instead of one, because it'll also help it run smoother and faster. It also, but it's not. I don't find that good. It ends up suffering the wiki problem of too many places where information lives, and so you forget to update something. So that's why
Yep.
event models like just keep it as a blueprint, so you have one thing everywhere. So you're more likely to update things and use it if it's in one place. So while
Agreed.
wiki pages, it looks like it's organized, it's got chapters and pages and this and that and the other. It's too dispersed,
Right.
right? I don't know if you found that as well
No,
when
I
you're.
mean, I think having documentation is great. Like when I go find a project on GitHub where there's good documentation, I love it. And I'm always kind of frustrated when there's not good documentation.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, I know that I hate writing a lot of documentation. So it's I don't it's important.
yeah, it is, and I think it's even more important in open source projects, because you end up incurring a lot of support and back and forth without that. And
Yeah.
I can also say that Martin putting out the event sourcing book, which includes event modeling, has
Hmm.
really helped people adopt event sourcing and event modeling, because there is a documentation in the form of a book to be able to use that. I think for
Yep.
I mean, we've held back on releasing some adapters to Event Store DB, for example.
Hmm.
Nicola has wrote an Event Store DB adapter um, for Node.js back in the early days, and then people were
Okay.
asking us like, why are you not releasing this as an open source project? It's like, well, because we haven't really had the luxury of time to put together a good documentation for it, and so that people would know how to use the API properly and all that. So we didn't feel good about releasing something without documentation for people to understand how to use it. So it is important, because if we did release it publicly, we would probably be criticized for not having the time to support the requests for information or patches or whatever, as we had to obviously continue to work to keep the company going, and we didn't have that many spare hours of the day to do anything else.
Yeah. So you pretty
So
much have I'll happily accept pull requests type of.
yeah, it's just kind of not the best way to go about things. I think it's kind of a
I
tired
agree.
meme, right?
Yep.
Yeah, quit your whining, send a pull request, right? Fix it yourself or whatever. Not good. So yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's thank you for the snarky comment. Everything is coolio. Whoever you are on YouTube. Modeling is not writing documentation. Yes, yes, you're right. You can prove yourself right, very, very much so. But I think it's more nuanced, um, as hopefully we explained here. Um, so yeah, if you have any more questions or comments, feel free to drop in on. You're streaming too, right?
Actually, I'm not
Oh,
streaming
you're not.
right
Okay,
now.
so so we're just
It
streaming
was
on my
it was
account. So we're on LinkedIn and X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, YouTube, and
oh wow, we're out on
Twitch,
TikTok.
Twitch as well.
Okay.
So five things.
We're all the
Five.
places.
Yeah,
Nice.
we're in almost all the places. I don't know. There's so many now. Whatever. These are the main ones that I know of, and we're on all of them, so that's okay. But also on the if you go to the Discord server for event modeling, there is there's a live stream channel there. So if your questions are kind of on topic with event modeling and event sourcing, it's nice to use the Discord channel um, instead, because then people that are discussing subjects in the other channels, they can always go to the live stream channel and kind of see what the comments were on our stream. So yeah. So let's get back to how your business your
Yeah.
business plans and like how you're moving forward. So are you focusing on any kind of marketing besides the live streams and what we're doing here? Are you getting some sort
Uh,
of mail out click funnels or whatever? Any of those things happening?
I haven't dug into, I think, in any click streams or anything like that quite yet. I've been networking with people here in the Portland area, people that I know, trying to
Hmm.
touch base with everybody I've met over the last 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. Your
Um,
personal network is the strongest set of future clients for sure. That's a good
yeah,
idea.
I've been going to a lot of coffees, lots of like half an hour long meetings, just remotely.
Yeah.
Uh, building diagrams, sharing stuff on LinkedIn, couple streams, but I was kind of waiting to get this better equipment. Um,
I mean, I look at some of my earlier streams. I didn't have the lighting or anything. I was like this
yeah,
dark overlord kind of evil presence with a floating head of death. I called it because couldn't see anything else behind me. It was just this dark image with just
yep.
shadows
And I had a lot
highlighting.
of I have a lot of backlighting in this room where I'm at. Luckily, my brother-in-law, he watched my first stream and he was like, "No, you got to do something about that lighting."
Yeah, but I definitely did the incremental thing too. The important thing is just to start. So I think that's great. I mean, a lot of people are getting ready to get ready, and they're just
Yeah,
procrastinating in a sense in a lot of ways. So
yeah.
it's good to see that you just went
There's
for it.
always a reason not
Yeah.
to do it. Um,
Everything could be improved. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. And so
sure.
I still haven't even programmed the shortcuts on my OBS to switch the scene that I want. And I flip sometimes from this scene when to back to the coding sharing thing. So it's something that I do often enough. And I finally got my tablet set up properly because I had it flat on my desk,
Uh-huh,
but with the lights, there's a lot of glare, and it's a monitor tablet, so it was really hard to see what I was drawing directly on it anyway. So
uh-huh.
I finally ordered one of these little tilt things that you can put your tablet in, and now I can see perfectly and draw things just fine. I on my last stream I drew some diagrams as I was explaining things, and I think it worked well. I still need, again, it's an evolving
Sure.
process. I would never do it if I didn't just start, because now I'm using Krita for drawing, and then I need to kind of have my panels set up so I can pick a color very easily. Right now, it's kind of like this tiny little panel, but I know there's a better way to set up your palette so you can choose colors more easily. And
Uh-huh,
I still haven't programmed the buttons on the tablet itself to do the
sure.
undo and redo and whatever else you want in there. um,
There's
and
always something to do.
yeah, and then of course there's I probably want to use, instead of just freehand drawing, I probably want to use Miro or Draw.io or Inkscape or some vector thing to draw rectangles and other things. So there's definitely a couple of other tools I haven't really had time to set up, but I'm starting with what I have, and I'll add it whenever I can,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
to improve things. But it's kind of weird. I mean, I've one of the things that I've had up. You'll probably get into this too now that you're working for yourself. Is you get incentivized to, you find more energy to do certain tasks than others. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't want to do the bills today. It's like, ugh, yuck, I don't feel like doing that. So I'm just gonna do a live stream. I'm gonna code a little bit, but eventually it catches up that you got to do this thing, and
Yeah,
maybe sometimes it just feels better to get the monkey off your back for that you have to pay
sure.
some bills or something, and then that actually feels better, and so you'll actually put off doing something like a live stream to take care of your bills and like that. So
That's true.
I found that really listening to your emotional self helps you become more productive, because yes, on certain days you could force yourself to pay the bills, but you'll probably make a mistake. It'll probably take twice as long because you're so not into it that it's
Right.
actually a waste of time. And
Right.
you would be better off doing a live stream and then doing your bills the next day instead.
Yeah. I mean, even last week, uh, I just felt like taking some time just to code,
Yeah.
and that's what I did.
And
I
why are you
wouldn't
doing
have
this? Because you want to create an environment where you have the type of coding experience that you dreamt of, right?
Yeah,
And same for
exactly.
me. So any excuse to sit there and code is absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm still doing this, because I love doing this kind of stuff. So why
Yeah,
would I, you know, keep myself away from it?
right,
Especially
right.
now that there's, so much I think I got discouraged along the way when there was so many frameworks that you couldn't really, especially in the JavaScript side, so many different frameworks that it was so hard to become good at anything because
Yeah,
the field just kept moving underneath you, and unless you were coding 24/7, you couldn't really be effective. And then if you're
yeah,
coding 24/7 and you have a business, when are you going to get clients? When are you going to hire people? When are you going to do all the other stuff? You couldn't do it
yeah,
all, right? So I actually found it quite tough before, and now it's a lot easier with all the large language model integrations into the IDEs. I find that now my 4 hours of googling and going on Stack Overflow have disappeared, and now I can make much more effective time. Now I continued to code before
yeah.
that, of course, but the amount of production and the limited amount of hours that I could find to do the coding, especially where there's a shifting, the tech underneath you was shifting all the time. It was just it was frustrating. I felt frustrated because when I learned to program, things didn't move that fast. Like you could know C and then continue to code in C for 15 years and really become good. Now, how
But it,
fast frameworks for the web and what, especially if you're doing like information management systems like what we do, automating next point of sale system or insurance company or whatever,
right.
you're not going to be writing C. You're going to be writing something that's got a web framework probably, and that web framework guaranteed is not going to be the same thing in 5 years. Even the same framework. I mean, look how Angular changed from
Yeah.
its first
Well,
version to right.
I was just gonna mention that back
Yeah,
when I was programming a lot,
yeah,
still the JavaScript landscape just moved so fast. I think I started a project on Angular 8, and by the time it was ready to be released, it was Angular 12 or
yeah.
13.
So
So,
isn't that frustrating, right?
yeah,
Like, what do you do? You're gonna get it. I mean, any certification is kind of meaningless in any of these text
yeah,
things because it's just okay, great. You spent all this money and certification on something. It might count for something, but like the thing's already on a different version. So
and there's always those classic examples of like people trying to recruit for a JavaScript framework.
yeah,
And they want 5 years experience, but the framework's only been around
yeah,
for 2.
yeah. Of
Yeah,
course, the classic meme joke there of
yeah,
wanting 10 years of experience in something that's been around for 2 years. Of course. Um, I mean, I kind of laugh, but at the same time, I actually want to talk to people to ask them why they're asking for this. And
mhm,
a lot of times when I did that, there was actually good conversations. Um, it was probably some recruiting company that tried to help them, quote unquote, by saying, we need more senior people. And they
yeah,
took the liberty of upping the years, not knowing that the history of the framework. So it's usually some management thing that causes
sure,
these problems, or an HR department that's out of touch. And I hated HR departments because they had this incredible amount of control over people
yeah,
without actually knowing what those people did. It just seemed so off balance, and just like, I don't know. And sometimes the smugness of the people in HR that they could wield this power over people that they knew had more skill about the skill that they were hiring for. It was
yeah,
just, it's almost an evil aspect to these people that would, you know they would get off on the fact that they could frustrate someone or block someone from being hired, and on both
yeah,
sides. Like, I'm sure those managers that had to deal with their own company's HR are like, you bastards, like I had a really good candidate and you basically cock blocked me from like
Oh,
having this person on my team. Like,
uh-huh.
you're the worst wingman ever. Like, you guys suck. I hate that department, right? So I don't want to go back to those Dilbert situations ever again. Now, I'm not saying every company's like that. Lots of companies have really
No.
good HR people, and they're talking, and actually the managers that are going to be working with those people are writing the requirements. But there's certainly some corporate environments where the silos are just a little bit too deep, and
Yep.
then the process goes through this stuff. So yeah,
Process for process sake.
yeah. So yeah, like anything, there's, it's a spectrum. Some are effective, but I certainly remember the places that and I think I was a victim of one of those times to those instances as well. And so I
Uh-huh.
remember having to go through a different department or a different section of the company to get hired for something else. And also, I think when I was in the position of helping hire people, I'm not sure. I think I still had to get authorization from my manager to hire someone, but I was doing
Uh-huh.
the legwork. And I said, well, we don't have budget for this. So I had to like hire people, like really good developers, for like a QA role just to get them into the company, and then give them a raise, and then get them through to be a
Get them
developer.
promoted.
It was just awful. All these artificial,
Yeah.
crappy, you know, um, limitations, yet they
Yeah.
keep espousing how fast they're moving, how adaptable their company is, and like how we're moving with them. It's like, you're not. It's a bunch of
No.
marketing
That's marketing.
gibberish. Like,
Yeah.
the amount of effort, the teeth I had to pull to get these people in is just unbelievable. So it's another reason why I wanted to start my own company, is because I wanted to make sure that all the dysfunction that I saw in this industry was not present there. And it's one of the
Yeah.
reasons that event modeling evolved, is because it cut through a lot of this crap, and just got
Yeah, a
through
lot
it
of the
to
subjectivity. I love how
yeah.
you structured and really how you sell software, because it cuts out so much subjectivity. Because I know plenty of uh, super senior developers who, I mean, they just they don't produce the same. I guess, what am I saying? Trying to say here, like, there are people with very high ranking positions that don't probably produce the output that they should.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone's subjectivity is the correct word. Like, a lot of people have their own opinion of what good quality code is, of
Sure.
what good quality requirements are. They have their own opinion on the level, on who should have input on the requirements, or any other things. So it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And yeah, removing
And
subjectivity is, while it sounds pretty evil to a junior person, a junior senior that says, "Oh, I'm so smart, I should have freedom to do whatever I want." It's like,
yeah,
yes, you should, but you should also have the test of time, so that what you are proposing is actually a good set of standards for everyone to follow. So they're right, but I think a lot of people are, and I was there many years ago, the Dunning Kruger kind of curve, where to me this was the epitome of whatever. To me, Agile was the epitome of development at one point, and I totally turned 180 on the subject with enough experience. And in the end, it's the same goal: is like, how do we get everyone to, the intention is good always. Like,
yeah,
I'm doing this, and my opinion is there because this way will be better than any other way I've seen, so everyone should do it this way. But my experience is limited to my own actions and where I've been, and so I have blind spots, and so do others. Um, but you know,
speaking of that,
persevering through many years, seeing all these things, you do actually come to some, at the time, the best ways to do it, right? And so getting a good convention that's simple, that's repeatable, that removes the subjectivity, so that everyone is pointing in the same direction and they're not stepping on each other's toes. You limit the amount of arguments between developers. You limit the amount of arguments between developers and stakeholders. You limit the amount of
yeah,
arguments between different stakeholders too, at all
yeah,
levels. And so event modeling was really one of those things that ended up having a transparent way to collaborate, and then of course once decisions were made, that you could stick to them, and you wouldn't have surprises jumping out when you were implementing. Right, that's one of the other things, that this predictability, the surprise factor, the reason we have stand-ups in other teams to remove blockers, those don't exist because this cadence has gotten to a level where the level of surprise is at a dull roar, not something
Right.
that you have to deal with every day, like where you think you give the latitude to everyone be the smartest, and great, you've enabled everyone to implement their idea of the best way of doing things, and
Exactly.
that's incredibly horrible because there'll be different ways of doing things. Like, I was a big refactoring proponent, and getting legacy code under control, and getting technical debt under control. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, the dungeon master cowboy coder would go in and blast away any efforts because they had a bug to fix, and they knew how the old system worked, and they knew where the tables were and what data was in there, and so all my changes reverted, and I had to rebase them on top of whatever the heck they did, and that would
Yeah.
set me back to the starting point, because now I got to think of things how they work now with that bug fix introduced, and so weeks of effort just down the toilet.
Yeah.
that's what
And learning
that's
all the
what that's what
learning
you
all
get
the patterns.
when you allow everyone to be right in their different opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Uh, just going back to Agile, after going to the conference last September, and meeting Dave Thomas, which was
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for bringing Dave. That was cool. Um, I honestly, after reading through the manifesto, I feel like event modeling is closer to the Agile manifesto than
Oh yeah.
Agile.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think about the goals of, and I had a really good call with David Nicolette, which was one
Mhm.
of the original attendees at this summit, where the Agile Manifesto was there, and he gave me a bit of a background on why Agile started out. It's not that people liked XP or liked TDD or something.
Yeah.
It's really it was a an answer to the sweatshop treatment of technical workers in the 80s. Um,
Oh.
it was really coming out of the fact that this was like assembly line workers
Hmm.
kind of treatment of
I didn't
software
realize that.
engineers. So it was actually a rebellion against the management style. That was it Taylorist? Is it Taylor that had this factory? Who's the guy that had the? It's Taylorism, isn't it? It's called Taylorism. Now I have to look online. I don't. This is an important point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um. Where do I have this? Taylorism. Taylorism.
Taylor Swift is the first thing that popped up.
No, see, no, you're too young. if you're in Taylorism. Um. Okay, let's go to Merriam-Webster. A factory management system developed in the late 19th century to increase the efficiency by evaluating every step in a manufacturing process and breaking down the production to specialized repetitive tasks.
Okay.
So they're basically, looked at as people were looked at as bricklayers, kind of cogs
Yeah.
in a machine for business. So I thought, because I wasn't born in the 60s or 50s, and some of these
Hmm.
people, that's when they were born. Um, I had a much more inflated version in my head. I put software engineers on a pedestal. Oh, these are geniuses. They're millionaires because they're so smart.
Yeah.
Growing up, that was the idea that, wow, you can operate these complex machines to make them do incredible things at a scale that nothing's ever been done at this scale ever. I was in awe of what that was. And the truth was, if you were in the industry, it was quite the opposite. It's kind of like that Simpsons episode where the yo-yo guys come to Bart's school and everyone's like, "Oh, these yo-yo performers, they're so talented. I want to be like that person when I grow up." And then you see the back of the school and they're all getting herded into the van for the next thing, right? All huddled in the back.
I've not seen that episode, but I experienced that in real life. I didn't see him get shuffled into the van, but I definitely remember school
I
assembly
always
doing
use
a yo-yo
Simpsons
performance.
episodes as a way to communicate. So, oh, Yurdis has a comment.
Need to pull up
So yeah, it's Yurdis has a comment. He says, "Wait, aren't we all the new factory workers?" Well, this is a better factory. Okay, I made a better factory,
yeah,
Yurdis. It's got pillows to sit on. You get tea. You know, it's nice. It's not one where you're standing with back problems over a conveyor belt assembling things anymore. I think it's a little
right.
better. um, yeah. So, oh, and Krishna says you guys are working very hard to take event sourcing to the next level. Thank you for such events. Well, it's our pleasure. It's
Yeah.
we actually enjoy software development again, and it's just gonna get better. I think event sourcing as a core way of developing the majority of the automation of businesses, at least, is makes sense. It's like why wouldn't you apply the due diligence that you would for money in with your accountants? Why wouldn't you do the same thing for the information that your system is responsible for? So to me, it makes no sense to do it any other way.
Yeah.
And I hope that our experiences that we're sharing here shows that this is a valid approach, not just valid, but a superior approach. And I wanted
Mhm.
my business to be an example that not only did we survive by taking an extreme at the time viewpoint that all systems should be event sourced, we didn't go bankrupt. In fact, we thrived because of not willing to not not conceding that some systems are going to be not event sourced.
Right.
So yeah.
No, it is great. I totally agree there. Event sourcing, I just find it just makes programming fun again.
It does. Yeah, it's and I mean even now, pushing I feel that I have more latitude now to push event sourcing to the next level because of this level of acceptance. I think I was
Yeah.
always back to square one in terms of like the arguments just to uh, you know, justify why I'm doing it. I think that was where things were stuck at for many years. Now I don't have to justify why I'm doing it. I can move to the next point is saying, people are now asking, how do you do it instead of why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And it's like, what do I need to know to do event sourcing? So I'm finding that the questions with event sourcing have shifted over the last 10 years to like, okay, because we had certain things drive, we had blockchain that showed that we need you
Yeah.
know immutable store to have a dependable source of truth. We needed that history of what happened to have a proper audit of what went into what wallet, where in the world, and all that, and have this consensus. That was step one. Step two was really AI. That now shows the history of data is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's hand in glove with how your context window and how you evolve the next word that the LLM is going to predict for you is so in line with how event sourcing works by having this ever growing ledger to look at behavior as data. Right? That was the
Yeah.
thing, is that behavior was always shoved into, oh, that's just the code. So
Yeah.
what we've done is by looking at the what behavior leaves behind as events as being really the definition of the behavior itself. And so now
Mhm.
we've basically put behavior as data,
Yeah.
which is quite important. So
And I really love how you've been on your live stream, on I guess on this live stream, how you've been starting from scratch, like doing the simplest possible event store. I love
yeah,
that you're just doing it with
just
files.
files. It's just a JSON
Yeah.
file. That's all.
Yeah.
But the next step, I mean, I had a really good chat with actually the next podcast with Martin. I think that's when
Okay.
when we discussed this, and really looking at, well, why are we using databases? Because they have indexing, because they lock a row for us, because they increment a number for us. How hard is that to really implement at the file level? And I think there's a realization that in event modeling you get to, or sorry, in event sourcing and event modeling, but in event sourcing you're using multiple models for that are specifically like built for a specific purpose and only that purpose. Like that screen uses this model to display this
Mhm.
data, and nothing else makes use of that. So that allows you to not bloat that model with extra responsibilities. So in other words, it's very
Yeah.
simple. It probably uses one index or two indexes. So if it's that simple, then you should be able to implement your own index at the file level to do that.
Mhm.
And then you have full control and you're entirely vendor agnostic. And
Yeah.
and you have full control of how that particular model works, its own SLAs, how it looks on disk, how it takes care of, eventual consistency issues, how it takes care of, even events coming in out of order if you so
Yeah.
choose, if it has to do that. So that's the next step. And really, I think what happened on Friday when I was doing this live stream is really, I did a live stream for 9 hours, which was really going back to that solution, saying, you know what, I actually want some of these things to be, forget about the idea of an aggregate and the stream. I actually want the
Yeah.
command to be the object, not the aggregate. The command should actually not just be a DTO. The command should actually have a collection of event handlers, because it is, especially when we're talking about this dynamic consistency boundary stuff
Yeah.
now, that is a perfect place for the event handlers to live. I actually don't want to share an event handler with another command that supposedly is acting on the same stream. That's another form of coupling, and Yordis is talking here, and he's really the one that started this chain of my thoughts going like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of coupling that we've actually pushed into event sourcing from the initial steps, from the time that Fowler wrote about it in '05
Mhm.
till now, that those things are just things that we dragged in on our feet. We didn't wipe our feet at the door, and we dragged in all this crap from the traditional ways of working into event sourcing, because
Yeah.
we thought that keeping the best of the best practices from the traditional world would somehow still apply to how you do event sourcing, and they don't.
Yeah.
They do to a certain extent, but they certainly limit you from moving further on using event sourcing. And I think the work being done around the dynamic consistency boundary. But I like to call, I mean, one of the things that I talked in this new episode of the podcast that's coming out soon is the fact that this DCB, dynamic consistency boundary, actually has the equivalent on the read side, which is equally important. It's the dynamic. I think it's not the consistency, but the context boundary, because
Okay. Okay.
there.
Yeah.
And there's an important thing, because I think this is the first time that event modeling is going to actually make given when then applicable for the read side, the state views. So it's
Okay.
not going to be given when then, given then. It's going to be given when then, given when then. And the reason that that's happening is because if you look at the pattern and implementation, there is a when on the query that is really your where clause. A lot of these read models that you have, or these state views, are are collections of entire
Right.
set of records. So when you're actually displaying the information on the screen, and you're logged in as user 123, you're going to have a where clause to select only that row for that user to display that information. That
Gotcha.
is that is the when. So when you look at event sourcing from what code executes when, you actually
Mhm.
can make the way the code runs identical on the read and the write side. It's just the purpose of the code running after your hydration is slightly different. But then
Sure.
taking this other concept, even on the right side, of why can't I inject some of the data that's coming in my command into the event handlers in the hydration process? Why
Okay.
can't you further filter at that point?
Yeah.
And so that's something that hasn't been done. You don't see people talk about that because everyone's accepted that in an aggregate or a command handler or whatever, or before you
Mhm.
do whatever in event sourcing, you're going to this hydrate thing, which is that, oh, I'm just going to replay all the events and I'm going to do it
Yep.
blindly because I'm going to this magical state where now I can apply my command.
Yep.
Bull crap. You already know what you have as data in the command that could help you refine how you replay the history.
Okay. I need to.
So,
Yeah. I need to dig into this more. It makes a lot of sense. I haven't thought about it at all.
well, that's the beautiful thing about tearing down a simple solution and having an implementation that doesn't have a framework in it, where you can
Yeah.
say, and I can keep the events in this project to be identical,
Uh-huh.
and say that okay, well, let's codify it. How do we do that? How do we make it more generic? Um, well, I can certainly have my event handlers exposed as
Yep.
functions and pointers to the functions in an object. I can certainly have my mapper for the I call it a mapper, the thing that you do after you hydrate your read model, because it can map something to it filter and map. So it can get rid of
Sure.
the extra lookup tables that you might have had to include. So you have a
Yep.
model that's actually stripped down to exactly what you need on the screen. But then there's also the filter part where you can say where user ID is such and such. So
Sure.
both the mapper and filter can be thought of as a post processor. And on the command
Mhm.
side, it's the same thing, with slightly different purposes. It's really about uh, um, something that tells you about what your invariants are, right? So your invariants are, well, you can't have more than $100 on your order. So this command is going to put that number above that. So I'm going to throw an exception. Otherwise, I'm going to emit an event to have success. And um, so yeah, that would be one of those things that I would definitely have as in terms of implementation, it would sit at the same level of a function call, but it would have a different name. So you could say that these are two very differently named objects that have an almost identical structure. One is a command and one is a query, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
command query separation actually becomes the same thing. And actually, what you're doing is you're showing that they're actually quite identical in
Uh-huh.
terms of the instrumentation. And especially if you let go of the idea of having a table or whatever, and you go back to the mathematical sort of uh, nature of those functions, is that I'm always, going over all the history of events. But now
Sure.
I'm actually even more free to apply even more logic at a finer, deeper level to the point where one of the parameters of the command can actually influence how or if I run an event handler on the very first event I'm projecting from,
Interesting.
right?
That is. Yeah. That's really interesting. I've not used that technique, but now I would definitely want to go off and explore it. I'm just trying to think of a
Well, we can
use
do
case.
that in code right now, man.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's let me get my screen set up because yeah, this is kind of what people were asking for a long time. Um, and so let me just go back to my I have a sharing scheme here where I can keep you on the screen and we can look at the code
Okay.
at the same time. Um, and I'm really excited about these next level of these next few live streaming sessions because once we do this, the next exciting part is really, I think, what's going to push the whole event sourcing to the next level, which is really addressing the fact that we should be writing our own indexing for how we make optimistic and pessimistic concurrency um,
Okay.
happen through our own control and at that fine level of like, how do I do this for this for this state view, for this state change, and how do I map that they actually overlap in cases, or I have to coordinate with them, and then it becomes kind of like a solution that Git already gives us to this direct acyclic sort of graph,
Yeah.
where if you don't have the reference, it didn't happen. Right? We have to have those strong types of conventions for how we deal with all these concurrency issues that right now are these magical problems solved by our database legacy. Total nonsense.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all solvable by convention. And the reason I know that is because we solved those problems on pen and paper long ago with giant companies that were able to coordinate trade routes and all those things, that happened over a much slower, less efficient thing. So why can't we do the same thing with all this stuff that we have under our hands? I think we just overcomplicate things because it's so easy to create crap. And so
Yeah.
now, yeah,
Of
we need
course.
Postgres for everything. It's like, no, you don't. You absolutely don't. Yeah. So let's let's see if I can share the screen and we can jump right
Sure.
into code. Oh, I do have you on the screen. This is sweet.
Sweet.
Look at
Yeah.
that. You're just in the
Okay.
corner here. I can move you around so that you kind of sit there. See, I'm on the
There.
lower right, and you're on the lower left. I'm on the lower right.
Awesome.
This is cool. Okay, so this is the event model that we're using. So this is a solution that I've been using since last year. Kind of talk about, for the people that are new here, this is all the slices in an event source system that where we go through a wizard to set up our open spaces, where we name the open space, we set some dates, we add some rooms, we add some time slots, and we generate a QR code for the participants to scan, and doing that. And so this is where we can actually kind of have a non-trivial example of what's happening. And the code I wrote was the other insight that I had, and this is again in the podcast mentioned, but I really wanted to have, let's look at the code, where I have one piece of, let's go back up to the naming thing. It's a real easy solution here for the naming thing's quite easy. So we have, okay, so here we go. Set conference name, right? Post. Okay, so
Yep.
I set the conference name here, and then I have my set conference name command handler, really, right? I have the
Yep.
history and the command, and then I have a switch statement here. So I have a reducer. So, okay, I kind of have to go from here to here to see what's going on, and my test is here. As we get more intricate, kind of more non-trivial functionality, this ends up being quite far. It starts to move further and further away, especially when you have tests, as we keep doing this. So what I really wanted to show is that if we have, well, let's do a different version of this set name convention. So instead of having a function set name, I can have a command.
Sure.
Name conference command. And traditional commands would be just data, DTOs.
Yep.
But that is not what we're proposing here. It should actually carry its own behavior with it, because this command treats information in its own way. So we have data and we have meta, but we can also have behavior. And what do we have in behavior? I'm going to use the Canadian spelling as a rebel.
Sure.
I'm going to do that. So what I have is behavior, and the behavior, it consists of a number of things. It consists of event handlers for hydration.
Okay.
We can have that, and we have, oh, it knows what I did before. It says invariant function. That is the one that once we hydrate, we can say, given the state that we're in, can I accept this command?
Okay.
How did it know? I tell you, AI
That
is
is
insane.
wild.
When you have a really good solution like this with predictable stuff, either the microphone was on and Cursor AI was listening to what I was saying, Anyway,
That's wild.
I mean, look at that, right? Um, Part of
Wow.
behavior is invariant function, um, but that's not it. We also want one more thing, and that would be our exceptions, because we want to know what our exceptions are,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, this in a way this reminds me of sometimes when I'm dealing with a command, I might generate two models, a decision model as well as a response model. I mean, this is different, but it just gives a little bit more specificity, I guess, on how I handle commands.
Well, I mean, exceptions right now can just be I want them by names, so I should have them as strings, and this one is okay. So let's take a look at what that is. So I mean, let's see. The exceptions can be. Do we need a name for it? I guess we can have a string, so we can say no, no, no change, right? And then here we can actually have an error that's already made, right?
Okay.
They can grab that and put it in here, and then get rid of this guy. That's just superfluous. That's what we don't need. And then our behavior. So our event handler is really looking for what do we have here? Event name type conference named, right? That's all we have here. It's the only thing that we have.
Okay.
And of course, yeah, we have state and event, and we have that,
Yeah.
right? And that is the only event handler that we really need in
Uh-huh.
this case, because that's all we have here. And everything's a reducer. But now, because we do a reduce for every single thing every time we do a command handler, we can have this done by a single function for everything. That's where we have our infrastructure to be kind of predictable, right?
Uh-huh.
So what is the problem here? Expected comma. Oh, because we have like tuples here.
Oh,
So
yeah, it looks like
this
you
has
just
to be
have
just
an
an
array.
object because that's
Yeah.
better. So if we just have that instead of that, just curly brace will do. Now we have like a dictionary lookup, which is kind of what
Yeah.
we want. Um, so
Okay, so this is basically so every time a command comes in, rather than the traditional way of picking the events by stream, you're I guess where does the selector come in here? Because you're evolving your state
yeah.
differently. But then I guess it's up to you to how
Well,
what
I'm
set of
thinking the
what
other thing is that because this has so this will have so we will have an example of const conf conference name state view.
Yep.
I don't like the word command. Let's make this state change.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because I don't want my large language model to be influenced by all the bad examples of event sourcing out in the code bases there.
Sure.
So let's see what we want to do here is that we have a conference name state view. I think we have something that's already called that. Set conference name, and we have let's just kill these let's get these tests out of the way. Yeah, so we have conference name state view, which is this. which has the same thing, right? It has, see, this is where I'm not using, oh, actually I'm using a reducer.
Yep.
But instead of having an if, I should have a switch case statement in there too. Just so I have everything done the same. Anything that you do with a filter or a map, you can do with a reducer.
Yep.
At any point in time. If you're doing a reduction of a whole array, you can build up an array in your accumulator, and so it acts like a
Right.
map. So it's totally fine, right?
Yep.
So I mean, this is going to ruin things, but I just wanted to show, that I have this as an object here. But I really wanted to say that because all of these things are going to have the same structure, the return object should have meta type, which is an event, but I should also say direction or super type, or what's the meta type? What's a good name? This is the event type. So maybe we should say
Event type.
and maybe that's it. Because I'm still not 100% on this, because I think in other languages you won't be able to use to reflect on the property names as easily. So I really want to have something like type as well, where it'll have event. The reason for that is I actually want to use the exact same structure for queries.
Yeah.
And state changes. So state views and state changes, but also to be able to, instead of throw, this is important because it's going to decouple a lot of the implementation, where we're going to have a meta and the type is going to be exception.
Okay.
Instead of an event. And this is just going to be a return. So we're going down the road of Golang where we actually return values for exceptions instead of throwing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean,
so the reason I'm doing this is because now we have our test runner. Becomes much easier instead of having to check if I'm doing a command check here, and then if I'm checking for an exception instead of regular functionality, or if I'm checking for a state view. All of this collapses down to one thing. Further, all I have to do is assert on the JSON serialization string as being identical. I don't have to do a property by property comparison of what my expected event was to what my returned event was.
Yeah.
I can just JSON stringify the damn thing, and that's it. And that's all I need. And so all my unit tests are this. Just those lines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all my unit tests are just encoded as JSON objects. Where's my tests? I gotta find the test. Here's a test. So let's go to this test here. So it's just expressing the timeline that I have here. So, any of these things here, any of these timelines are expressed as this is a checkpoint on time where I'm throwing an exception. If I try to do a command with registration ID here, I no longer have to have a test function here, right? I can have just the command that I'm testing. In fact, I could add these things onto the command. So I don't have to float, let me see if I have a test here. So let's do that. So if I'm here coding away, now the beautiful thing about having all of this here is that I have my event handlers right beside the data that I'm getting, right? Where I have the name. So this is state name here. Right now, it doesn't matter, but I have the power to use my actual data that I pass in the command to actually be active in here, right? Here we're not referencing this data that's coming in. We're only referencing what the history is being passed in, right? So we have, we have, where is it here? We don't actually have it up here.
Do you need some initial state, like some zero
No,
object?
no, we do. Yeah, we do. You're right. We do. We actually do. So we have behavior. We have the event handlers, and although I was actually thinking about this, you might not. If you have a good opinion on what the first event is that you will hit, or what you should have, then your actual event handler should have
some creation step. So the initial state could just be null or undefined.
exactly.
There you go. Yeah.
Right? And that's it. That would only make sense if we had more event handlers in this case. In this case, it really doesn't matter. It's like when we hit that, that's it. That's all we do. And if we have, I mean, yeah, we could. Yordis says that we could, and probably he's right. Yordis seems to always be right these days. So
Yeah,
we definitely should have that.
Yeah.
So we can add that as another behavior. And so, I mean, I really don't need it to be a callback. I can just have, yeah.
Sure. I've gone back and forth because I typically use the the functional decider pattern. I mean, it is really just an aggregate, just written a different way. So I'm quite comfortable with having the initial state, but it ultimately ends up being
Look, it knows what I want to do. That's crazy.
A zero object or.
Did you see that? It just did the whole initial state thing here. That's
nice.
That's just
prepped it for you.
Unbelievable. So the nice thing is that if they're done, you can just like one line them, right?
Yep.
And so now you can have a whole bunch of get out of here. There we go. Right. So it can actually be quite compact. So I'm not scrolling around all over the place to find my context for what I'm doing. When I'm, and this brings me to the next point, because I really don't want, this to be here. I really don't want this const here. What I want is to grab this entire thing.
Yeah.
And I want it to live here as a parameter, replacing this whole thing here.
Okay.
That's where it belongs.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't need set conference name here. The data is here. Right?
Yep.
And meta type conference, and it's name conference. It's not conference name. This is the type because it's a man type. I'm adding this just for the sake of support for other languages that can't inspect property names as data as easily. I don't know. Normalize across languages, you need to be a callback. I don't think so. I think if you look at initial versions of C#, for example, it would be pretty friggin' clumsy to have a callback. I would expect data. If it's data, it's data. I don't need a function giving me data. If the function going to return data,
you could hide a lot of
I don't know. Maybe
Okay,
there's,
so
maybe there's a point that there's a callback if you're trying to like use manipulate the data from.
if you're trying to load it
Okay, I'll
from
have to probably do another stream with Yordis to understand what he's thinking about. He's so much smarter than me. It's insane. Like he's just like 10, 10 steps ahead of me all the time.
I really, the first time you talked about Yoris was at the conference, at least that I had heard you talk about him, and in the context of how to get rid of upcasters. And I thought that was brilliant.
The
Like,
upcasters, yeah.
why do upcasters?
Yeah,
It just
getting rid
makes
of the
sense. Like,
upcasters entirely. That
if you're,
was
if
fantastic.
you're,
One of the
if you're
it really set me off on this thing. Like I'm just gonna question everything that we accepted in event sourcing
yeah,
so far. So
yep. So it makes a lot of sense because I've worked in some governmental processes,
yeah,
and and when they change the process, the people in like version one of the process, they continue in that version
right.
until they've completed. And it's only new people that use the new process. And I just thought that made a lot of sense that we shouldn't use upcasters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the other thing that we have is an invariant function, but we also have a function that can be called on what the result type is. In this case, this is another thing that I got to go down is I have to go down another rabbit hole in terms of how we manage within event sourcing the navigation throughout the site, because a lot of stuff is dictated by what you actually got, whether you got an event, whether you got an exception, maybe what the contents are within your state if you're doing a query. And so
Mm-hmm.
now imagine that we actually have a projection of where you should be, and the redirect just takes you where what the map tells you where to be. So I don't have hard-coded things like this.
Okay.
I have this as data as well, because this is representable by data. You can have a map of like your site map
Sure.
and all the endpoints and all that kind of stuff, and you could very easily codify that to be just another state view. And now
So
you
do
have
you
a very similar way to treat every single web request, to the
sure.
point where you can even have a map for where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that,
And
that makes a lot of sense. So in a sense you would have some like setup script that populates your site with all
not
these
even,
events.
I mean, it could be event source. It could be event sourced itself.
Yeah.
Um, and so that would be that would be something that just plugs into state views. Now, state views can be cached at multiple different levels in your application, so we haven't even gotten to that point. But you start to open up all of these cacheability and memoization and all these different places at which you could have that. And one of the things about opening up, for example, the event handlers with this is that you could now inject even more things into these layers as needed, which really builds quite an amazing level of control into your whole application, while still having this dead easy history of just the events serialized as JSON objects on disk. And actually, as I kind of foreshadowed the future work of having indexes that we can control ourselves. You know, is let's question whether a JSON file per event is the simplest thing that we could possibly have that gives us full control of indexing. No, I would rather have a directory for the event with a file per property and its value, because now I could do indexing down to the level of each property without having to dissect and deserialize the JSON itself. And now I
Whoa.
could use symlinks and hard links to create entire structures of what one version of the history is for a specific view.
Sure.
And to that view, it's just a bunch of files anyway at that point. Right?
Wow. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
So
What
think
is that?
about it. Store your events not as JSON objects serialized. Store your events
Um,
as directories with each file, and then use symlinks and hardlinks. And I got this part of this idea from Sam Atom, who's doing the on auto stuff, because he's representing everything as a file and he's using symlinks and all that. Although we've kind of played around with that idea back during COVID, during the meetups when they went online, is really how you could, reference existing events on disk by other names and other directories for other purposes, and mostly
sure.
indexing. But it was scratching the surface at that time. Now that we're at this point where we're kind of changing the fundamental structure of how things work here, we can keep going very quickly to actually implement some of these things and come up with some scenarios where we want this indexing to be done at the time that an event is written to disk.
Yeah.
And here's a perfect place for it. At this point,
Yeah.
somewhere
So
in
then
here
every
is
so
where
if every
you
event
actually. Sorry.
if every event is a directory,
Mm-hmm.
and then the individual properties are files within that directory,
Yes.
and then the
And then
contents of
if
those
there's
files are
collections,
values.
you have directories within directories. So if you have multi layers and deeply nested events because of
Yeah.
some structure, you could have those collections as directories within a directory too.
Okay.
And so that would be pretty interesting for things like, having a specific user's view where
Yeah.
you simply don't repeat certain rows in the symlink version, and it
Uh-huh.
just has that. Further, because you're dealing with, so you have a lot of functionality built into the file system. For
Yeah.
example, ordering. You have to write down uh, a symlink that is called 000 because that's the first event. If my events
Uh-huh.
are called 000-event type, I could have a clash. I could have a 000 one event type and a 000 with another event type, and because those are different file names, they could coexist. But if I have to create a 000 file or symlink and I try to do it
Yep.
again, I'll get an error. That gives us
Yep.
our compare and swap, our pessimistic concurrency issues, right?
Yep.
It solves that issue, so I can go retry with the next number. I've solved that problem now with using the file system without writing extra code, and
Well,
it
that's
naturally will increment the number that I need, and then I could cascade. Once that's successful, then I can write the event in a where the actual event exists. Make it
sure.
point to where it's supposed to point.
Uh-huh.
So now we've deconstructed all the core support for any kind of application that needs indexing, filtering on these things, needs concurrency, needs a solid set of events that are globally ordered, at least within the scope of that one machine, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
that one directory. And then you could make different directories for different streams with that consistency just being, enforced for one service, not all services that you're hosting. So you could break those down to separate folders per service or for whatever organization you need, right? Just
Sure.
like you would organize your documents directory in your home folder,
Right.
right? So it's no different.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. So
yeah, I gotta play with that.
yeah. So it's this is kind of what I'm looking forward to doing this year and having again what this is going to do. Shoving this kind of command, right? This is a
Yeah.
command. Change state HTTP wrapper. The HTTP wrapper just gives, if something fails, it throws me to, the 500 page or the 400
Sure.
page. I throw a 400 if I know, if it's something that failed for a business reason, I want to show that business reason. I want to bubble it up to an error that the user can see. If it's an internal error, like I had an error reading the events from disk or writing an event to disk, then I want to show a 500 error, internal error. Go contact your sysadmin. The system broke, right?
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I want nice dark theme Web pages coming back, not the default express white page of death that's going to blind me. So that's why I have, if I look at the wrappers, they have this next action and success action, and that's where you have the 500s here for any issues, 422 for any business logic error, and that's why you have these wrappers. It's a really bad name for it. I'm probably going to rename it to something else, but essentially that's what it is. I don't want to repeat the same code of going to my error next somewhere in my paths handlers. I don't want that sprinkled in every single one of these, right?
Right.
That's why I have this in here, so I can do my business logic right next to that. But let's continue on with this. What else do I want? Tests. Done. Right?
Yep.
My tests can live here. I can remove.
Wow. So essentially, a slice is gonna
I can
become
remove
a
this. I
single
can just
function.
embed this into. I can embed all these tests right into
Yep.
here.
Yep.
That's all I need to do. And the other thing, I might actually do it the other way. So I actually might want to grab all of this as my collection of actions. I could have up here somewhere const actions, and then I can have actions dot push, and these are these things.
Right.
And my data is here. I can have my tests here. And I could make the converse way of doing this. I could have this actually migrate in here, and I could have something else manipulate and call app.post based
Sure.
on what I find here.
Right.
Because why would I not have, all the crap that lives here, including this redirect and error next
Yeah.
in here? So if I have um,
And then you during system startup, you iterate over this and set up all your endpoints and hook them up.
I mean, whatever. This is bad because it's a post. But if I had a get,
Sure.
I don't need a view here, obviously. But that's all I have. I don't know, not adjustment function, but on success. And here I could do the redirect.
Sure.
And here I would have the rec, res, all that other stuff. Next. All that stuff, right? Whatever I needed. The view wouldn't be here, but it would be and here I would have to have some logic to gouge out what this returned if it was an exception, right?
Sure.
Meta type, exception summary, and then I would have data or exception.
Gotcha. And then
That would be exceptions. Anyway, that probably won't work. It's defined in the same area, but you get the gist. Like there would
Yeah.
be a way to actually pass that in. And I guess this is where Yordis is saying that you need the callbacks so that whatever is using this structure could interrogate some other part of it and pass that in. So it would be, yeah. So that would be a function. And that would be
But no change. Yeah.
something like that, right? Because
Yeah.
now your framework could interrogate, this lookup and throw what you want. And this would have describing, all the things that you want.
It's really compact.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is that
Yeah.
you really don't want to have to scroll around between different files, places within the same file to really understand how this one piece works. This
Right.
is also going to help AI tremendously because it has. Think about the context as you're giving this in a prompt.
Yep.
You have everything, and everything is named correctly, right? As to what it's doing. So, like your next slice is going to be even easier because the LLM is just going to reference how you did this over and over and over again for different cases, right? And not only that, but once you shove this in there,
Yep.
like this whole thing tells you exactly how things are going to work. Now, the thing to figure out is, how do we now have a bootstrap function that's going to just wire up all the endpoints based upon all the actions that your application can take?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's not going to be too much of a challenge. It's just
No, I don't think so. I think it's awesome. And I mean, I started going down this rabbit hole, and I said to myself in the middle of the next function, man, I can take this to be even way more simple by just expressing, what I can do at what point, right? So if I can, maybe some of these things I want to push to the top, like, maybe I don't want to, where's my, there's the behavior here, and all these handlers here. Maybe I actually want near the top. Before behavior, I can say navigation. And maybe this is where I have things such as, paths where it sits, right?
yeah.
So I can sort of, and I can make this to be more compact as well. So I know that I want to, do naming conference, and I know that I'm going to be dealing with this page and this view, and I know that I'm going to have to have this behavior. Like my state is always going to be determined by how I interpret. Okay, my state's always the last time I named this conference. That's all. I ignore all previous ones. Cool, awesome. And then I have some invariants. It's like, okay, I basically don't want to have. I want to catch when someone thinks they're renaming it, but they didn't. I want to throw an exception.
Sure.
Cool.
Yep. Where do you like I guess the stream or the event selector? Where that feels like that needs to fit in here too.
What's that?
Like the stream of events, like the stream name or the selector for the events.
Well, this is it. Event handlers, they select that. So this would be now pushed. It now exists in, if I look at how I did this before,
Like
this is all just switch statements, right?
Okay.
That's where we have it right now. But I don't want this. I know that I'm running a switch case inside a reducer all the time.
Yep.
So I'm going to push that out to a function that just lives in one place.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm pushing this as just a set of event handlers and initial state. And I agree with Yordis. This should probably be a callback so that I can do other injections as I need.
Sure.
if that makes
But this
sense.
but this right now is assuming, right, that you're reading all of it, the full history, right?
Yes,
Not just a
but there could be another. You're right. So I didn't get a chance to explain that, but correct. There could be more functionality based on my data that I could
yep.
further filter based. This is that index
Yeah.
stuff. So we haven't put in the indexing functionality yet. But the interesting thing is that'll plug right into this. Once we
Uh-huh.
implement the indexing thing, what we currently get here in terms of this history, that will
Yep.
already be truncated because the
Okay.
history will be pre-processed by whatever index we want to use for this type of command at one level. And then another level would be this command and this specific data in the command would be another index that we could have, right? Especially if it runs often. Or we could have memoization in there, materialized view to a certain number of events that we don't have to therefore go back further.
Sure.
And we could say, you know, not only is because yeah, I mean the state. This is probably why Eurydice is talking about the initial state being a callback, because at that point I can inject what my pre-calculated things were to a
Yep.
certain point to have that caching built in. But my idea was to get there naturally, not to put
Okay.
all this functionality in there immediately. I would like to say, okay, my initial state is this hard-coded thing because we're always looking from the beginning. But let's say now I
Yep.
want to add memoization and all that stuff. I now have to have a callback because now I can have a map that says, okay, well, I have what the calculation will be at event 100. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to give you the initial state and every single event after event
Yep.
100 instead,
Yep.
right? And I can have that my framework take care of that, and that's where I have full control of my SLAs. I can say, yeah,
Yep.
this thing's gonna index on this, and it's gonna have memoization done to here, and we can also introduce, other things such as, maybe we have something that says that it's time to make a new entity. We're going to close the books on this. So those
Mm-hmm.
business rules we want to introduce, but I think they would be just event handlers. Um, However, it would be interesting to see if we could have meta events at that point, where I could say they're sort of not meta events, they are and they aren't, because it is a business concern. Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
your filing cabinet's too full, time to start a new one, or take some of the
Right.
oldest stuff, put it in the back room, right? Um,
Yeah.
so is that a business rule? Like if you're at a bank and one of the tellers
Yeah, it is.
filing cabinets gets to full, what do you tell them? Take everything
Yep.
back to the back room? No, probably like take half of the oldest stuff into the back room, right?
Yep.
Something like that. So but anyway, this is kind of where I really want to go with this. So we have the data, we have the navigation, then we have the behavior, right?
Uh-huh.
We could say, something like that. Um, Tests, endpoints, and instrument all that, because now I have everything living together. Like
Yep.
here, I can say that this is how I name a conference, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
flying around anywhere
Yeah.
in my solution to get the context of how I work here, right? I have
Yeah, I like those
uh
things. Yeah.
yeah, I have a very good structure, and I really wanted to start off with this example code just to be like, okay, you just call functions and it's quite easy. But now
Mm-hmm.
once you see the patterns coming around over and over again, and the fact that you have way more predictability if you make everything a reduce,
Yep.
and every reduce has a switch case statement, well, then why is that not bubbled out to something that you do always? And that
Right.
gives you this constraint, this convention for doing whatever you want, but within the confines of something like this. So here I can do a whole bunch of stuff, right? And there's some better examples in this application that has, you know, not as trivial. This is way too far because I was already moving to this down here
Yeah.
where you can see some of the
Okay.
beginnings
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. Um, yeah. So here's a really nasty one where I started to already have these event handlers done this way. See?
Yep.
Where it's got a lot: conference ID generated, registered, session submitted, voted for sessions, and closing vote. And for
So that's
example, where we were getting to with these, with the initial state and
yep.
the mapper function,
Yep.
where we fold away all the stuff, because we have a few things here, such as registrations as a lookup, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, where I actually don't want those things. Um, I have voters instead, or something like that. But notice that I have this state having registrations for the to store the names lookup.
Yep.
Well, I
Okay.
really don't want this registrations to actually be part of the model. That's why I have the mapper function at the end here to really tell
Okay.
me. And this should be on the next
Okay, so you
line
like
here.
reduce all the state and then you run it through another mapper function just to get like the final output that you really want to deal with.
Yeah. But again, this is a call to a state view function to do this.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing can be done flipped on its head by saying that I'm going to put any of those kinds of things out in a generic function, right? This is already a
Yeah.
generic function. It's starting to get there, but we can do better. And the fact that state change and state view are different because we have the ability to catch an error, and we don't throw errors on state views usually. So we don't want that to interfere with the navigation of the site. But we do want to do a hard fail on state changes, because in variants we want to have basically in variants we want to barf as fast as possible, like, hey, you can't add more items than this into your shopping cart, or hey, you entered in the wrong password, or whatever it is. We want to barf as fast as possible. State views are always passive, like they have to take each event as gospel, and they can't throw on
Right.
that because an event is a fact. So, but given what I said just now, these can be the same thing. And essentially, what
Yeah.
you just want to do is interrogate the last result if it's an exception. Otherwise, you're forced to, in a state view object, to handle things there, and always the only interface supported is returning an object. So if you want to throw an exception, it can only be done from a command. The only thing
Hmm.
that you can throw back from a query is a model.
Yep.
There is no option for you to throw anything else. And I want
Yeah.
that. If you're not following the convention, then your application should break.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so I
This is a
think
cool
what
area
I've
to
done down
explore.
there, this is kind of like the end goal is really, I want all relevant data and behavior to be in one place.
Yeah, and once you have this as well, then you could. It seems like it'd be really easy to also just layer like a little DSL on top to make it
Well, the DSL is not
even more.
necessary because AI is so good
Oh,
at just tab completing everything you need. Like the
that
idea of
that's true.
event sourcing plus AI,
Yeah.
there is no need for any of that DSL stuff from BDD ever again. The events tell you what you want. Here I can say that, yeah, I have these URLs and I want to do this, and
Mhm.
hey, here's how I handle my history.
Mhm.
If I didn't care, like let's say the cancel order thing where I don't care what the history is,
Yeah.
this
You
could
just
be
don't
empty.
enable.
This could be
Yeah.
absolutely empty, and it would just ignore any history, and it would just write that event that this order is canceled, and that's it. So yeah. Anyway, do you have time still, or do you want to go through your stuff?
Uh, yeah. Let
It's more of a
me.
brain dump from me than anything.
I've got. So I've only done a couple of streams so far, and what I was doing. See here, should I share my screen? There.
Okay, I switched my view so I can see your screen.
Okay. So I thought it would be good for me to start designing some of my own tooling. So what I did, at least to start, was start modeling out a system where somebody could potentially book a event modeling workshop with me.
Yep, I remember. So do you want
Yeah.
to share
So
your Miro?
yeah, are you seeing it right now?
No, you have to. Oh wait, I have to. It's my fault.
Oh, well, I
Ignore
can
me.
split.
I'm the dummy here. I have I forgot I have to like click on this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, maybe zoom in a bit because you can't
Sure.
read the writing.
Okay. So this was just a quick little mock-up of my homepage.
Nice.
When you hit the services button, this is what I plan on painting. Like a little choose A, B, or C. Um, so if I want somebody to book a remote workshop here, they'll click the select button there, which then fires off a start remote workshop request. Just kind of the creation event.
Yep.
Stores that as the event, and then I started modeling when I started this, Adam. I was thinking of having just like a little wizard,
Mm-hmm.
client side wizard, that would collect information over these four screens.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I thought about that, I was like, if somebody wants to do an event modeling workshop with me
Yeah.
and they've entered in their contact information, I want that to get persisted immediately.
Yeah.
So if they don't finish, I can maybe reach out another way.
Yeah, that's perfect. So yeah, so you're capturing the data, and
Yeah,
it's actually really one good reason to have a workflow instead of one giant screen is that you
yeah,
even if someone bails, you got enough stuff um, from them along to a certain point.
yeah. So then I kind of broke this up into then four, well, a bunch of vertical slices here. So I collect their contact information. Then I get some available dates that they might have for the workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And then I collect a bit more, like I want to know how many people will roughly be in the workshop. Because managing a meeting with four people is quite a bit different than 30. Um, and then potentially just a little information about like what they're looking to do. And then let's see, after they do that, then I don't know if the person requesting this workshop can legally sign for their business. So I present them with this question to maybe collect a new email address
Mm-hmm.
to get, proper authorized signature.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
It's interesting that you
so-
pop up the hidden ID on there, right? I usually don't do those, but
okay.
I mean, I guess you could. A good question.
Um, yeah, I go back and forth. It's unnecessary. I just wanted to show people like that ID still needs to be around there in
Yeah.
the view so that I can send it in with the commands. So after they kind of go through this little wizard, uh, then we collect all those events to basically build like this like review page essentially,
Yeah.
which is this basically just parroting back all the information they've already entered. They click request workshop, and that does a final workshop requested event. And because I don't want just bots spamming me, I'm going to then I have a little to do list here to basically send out an email verification. So that issues it goes up to the processor, to do list this, it sends out an email while I just record the fact that the verification email was sent
Yep.
for my own records. And then sometime later, they'll in their email client, click the link. It takes them to a page, and it posts the verify email command,
Yep.
which records it as an event, and then just tells them it's been verified. And then likewise, after they've been verified, then I'll send them out a kind of just a confirmation email.
Yep.
This email would be equivalent to this screen back here,
Yep.
just an email form, so they have an audit trail.
Yeah, I usually put the gear on the user's workflow that gets interrupted. I usually have it up
Oh, okay.
at that. So,
So you would put
and
it
the
up
other
here.
one as well, the left one,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Because that's like after they click the verify button,
Yeah.
that processor is kind of interrupting their workflow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I've always kind of kept the processors down on their own
Yeah.
swim lane, but
The
that
way that
actually
I
makes a
think
lot of
about it
sense.
is that if you ever have a little spinning circle on your screen when you're using a
Yeah.
website or an app,
Yep.
you kind of want to show that spinning circle as the gear here.
Yeah. I like that. I'll start doing that.
Because that shows part of like event modeling is the UX, right? Which is why
Yeah.
I do that. And where the events that feed the to-do list live and where the event gets stored after the command kind of tells you where the implementation is anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about where the gear sits. So you make use
Gotcha.
of it by saying, whose workflow are you interrupting?
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so then we send out the confirmation email, and then I haven't modeled this, but I'm going to send myself an email or some kind of notification as well. Because ultimately, anybody who requests a workshop, I want to build a view, a state view, such that I have like a list of like pending requested workshops.
Yeah.
So I just have this list view, click that details, and then it gives me like the full details. Because what I'd like is for somebody to maybe, provide 2 or 3 available dates for a workshop, and then I can kind of pick with my own schedule.
Yeah.
So I will then and select one of the dates that they've provided, click schedule workshop, which sends
Yeah.
the schedule workshop command and event, and then it once again sends out yet another email saying, "Hey, it's been confirmed," and this is kind of where I stopped. I have a lot more events that I need to get through here, but I have some stuff like send out a working agreement, getting it signed, potentially generating an invoice, integrating this with potentially PayPal, not PayPal, but Stripe or something
Yep.
like that, sending out a receipt, then finally confirming the workshop and sending like some like workshop packet information, like
Mm-hmm.
some initial info maybe to help them get started.
Okay.
Um, and then I was just so, oh yeah, yeah. Then potentially, all plans, don't always go as planned.
Yeah.
So I needed to start designing a way for them to reschedule. So I just have an event there, as well as okay, that's rescheduled confirmation. There it actually gets rescheduled, and then down here is like, yeah, if they need to cancel for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, the different cancellations and confirmations of the cancellations as well. And then a whole nother workflow for doing on-site workshops. There's a lot more to plan for logistically for an on-site workshop versus a remote workshop. So I have that as a completely separate flow.
Okay.
But this pretty much follows along the same similar story as the remote workshop. I'll just have probably a few different screens and probably some different legal documents that I need to send for an on-site workshop. But that's where I'm at. Now that I've got my green screen, I'm gonna be streaming a bit more to build this out further.
Nice.
Yeah. But I would say I'm still kind of in the identifying inputs and outputs phase. I haven't gotten to any of the given when thens or done really any
Well, a lot of this
prototyping.
stuff I try not to do too much. I want a walking skeleton for this type of project too, so I wouldn't be too worried about being too complete,
Okay.
because that gives you an opportunity at least to show even that change management's easy with event modeling and event sourcing.
Yeah.
Um, I've had to add certain things to my project here and there, and that's fine. I mean, it's the reality. Requirements
Sure.
will change, so you might as well, because you're just one person, so showing progress takes longer.
Yeah.
So you don't want to spend too much time in one area, and you can
Sure.
always excuse that as a simulation of potential refinement of what the client wants,
Sure.
which is
So
true. I mean, that does happen. They make up their minds later on
so
certain things.
when you're working with a client, Adam, and you're working on the event model here, like, do you because I guess I don't understand how it goes with contracts stuff like that because I see like you'd want the full event model defined right before you begin work.
Well, as much as possible to start the work. So we never
Okay.
want to unnaturally push things to where the client is uncomfortable talking about, the next part of the system that's going to work. And they realize that it's going to have some rework. But essentially what
Okay.
you're guaranteeing is the unit of work is the slice. So
Uh huh.
they understand that you will be rewriting some slices and that there will be some waste because
Yeah.
and it's not really waste. It's giving them something that works so they can form a better opinion of how they want the system to evolve. So that does include, some rework. Now there are domains where there will be, very little of that, like where there's established patterns and even examples of other implementations, such as the insurance domain,
Sure.
where there's a standard way of doing something. So whether you're doing the event model or they're helping you do the event model, it really doesn't matter because it's not going to really impact pieces that you already made, modeled.
Sure.
And so you can, with those well-known domains, really just kind of have both going at the same time. And
Hmm.
not knowing the full event model isn't going to hurt you because you're following a standard um, industry practice in most of those places. Um, and it's different when you have a brand new startup idea and someone's trying to be innovative and do things in a way that no one else has done.
Hmm.
Then you have obviously the whether you're doing event sourcing or not, there's going to be rework. So at the least you can do is have a unit of work that's better understood and a more fair, pay uh, for what value they're getting, right? So
Right.
each slice is a better containment of value, and even if you have to throw them away, at least they can feel what they're throwing away and that it costs money, and it's not assumed that rework is free, like we often do in this industry. Like, yeah, just refactor it, right? You got unit tests, you can refactor it. Not going to be
Yeah.
that long. And that's famous last words.
Right. And then the
So
project's 50% over budget.
yeah, so that's kind of
Yeah.
the slices are an honest way of looking at that level. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
worry about it. I mean, it really
Okay.
is case by case basis, and depending on the type of application you're developing. Like I said, the insurance industry hasn't changed a lot over the last 100 years, right? So relatively
Right.
speaking. So most of the underwriting and all the other things that you do in insurance is going to be kind of done in an established set of steps that the business operates in. And so your event model shouldn't really vary too much in that domain.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, then maybe rather than, fleshing this model out further, what I should do is I think
Just
we
get
got,
cracking. That for those
yeah,
first
get
few
cracking.
slices aren't going to change much, buddy.
No, I mean, and the sooner I get this out on the website, the sooner people can start booking for it. I mean, well,
Exactly. You can start to harvest those initial events. Like the first
exactly.
one where it asks you for like an email, I would have that implemented and deployed right now. Like it should have been done 2 weeks ago.
I'll get on that.
I'm your motivation. So you can put rectangles over that and say this is what I'm is in
Yep,
progress and start
yep.
cracking the code, and that's gonna make for an
Let's
exciting
do it.
stream.
Well, this is Miro. Come on. Let me draw a box around that one. It looks like I need to shift some stuff around. Uh, Early on when I was first event modeling, I was really I wanted everything to just look perfectly, get all the swim lanes, get everything, all my slices vertically aligned really nice, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that takes a lot of time managing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing is that I'm working on my own event modeling framework on eventmodeling.org,
Uh-huh.
where you can plug in your own large language model and it'll auto generate all the stuff, but it'll all be aligned with divs and all that. So what you're doing here, manually caressing this thing to look right,
Yeah. And
just
it
going to be
still does.
automatically snapped because this really is um more aligned with a spreadsheet than it is a free form whiteboard. Um,
Right.
so I want to make sure that that's done. But then again, like a lot of it is tedious. Like, I have to like type in
Yep.
the command name and all these parameters. And why can't I get the same kind of tab complete that I have in my IDE?
Yes.
Um, well, that's the goal. Is that I want to build that IDE experience into that web page, and you can export your model to Miro or to whatever.
I like that. I will definitely use that.
Right. So that's the idea there. Um,
That's as good enough for now. I'll clean it up a bit later.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Just get that blue box and that green box implemented. And
Yep.
you can short circuit this by having, okay, if you're not going to do the calendar thing yet, put in a
Yeah.
surrogate slice that says, "Hey, thanks. I'm working on this. I'll update you on the next step soon."
Yep.
So you can make some room there and add another slice to give them a message. I wouldn't put a note. I would actually just make.
Just
Oh,
build
you
it.
can do it
Come on.
later. Yeah, I just make it.
Just do it now.
Just add it, and yeah, that's what
I
I
guess
would
I
do.
could have even used Martin's new
I know
feature,
it's awesome. I love it. Yeah, Martin's done such a good job with this add-in. Awesome.
Yeah. Here we go. We'll do this little drawing one. There.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what you want.
There we go. Export to screen. Close that. There we go.
Yeah,
Boom.
yeah, that's all you need. Now you got your first two slices, a blue box and a green box.
Yep.
Actually, you got two. You have
Just
two
blue
blue
box
boxes
as
because you
well.
want to capture that contact info. So yeah, that should have been live 2 weeks ago, man.
I need to stop having coffee with people and just get to
Yeah,
work.
yeah, that actually helps. Is actually finding some time and make sure that you're booking coffees in the afternoons and just save
Oh
your
yeah.
mornings, right?
Yep.
There'll be plenty of time. Like, and if you can push meetings to the evening, depending, like, hey, if your kids are at soccer anyway, you can have
Yeah.
a meeting for an hour during that time or something, right? So try and find those, and I find that the coding is better during the day than it is in the evening, just because I get
Yeah.
tired without caffeine. I can't drink as much caffeine as I want to because it's not healthy. So
Yeah. I hear you. I work my best coding hours, I would say, are between like 9 and noon, and then probably 8 p.m. to midnight.
yeah, sometimes that's true for me too. It really did change over time for me because I used to be a night owl. I used to code it into the 4 in the morning when I was a teenager. Um,
Yep.
and uh, and that's definitely not the case anymore.
Yep.
That's, I mean, I could skip school and sleep in, but now I have, other calls in the morning, so I can't be groggy and
Yeah.
sleep in and miss school. So
Yep. Different stakes now.
it's not that, because people say, "Oh, you're just old, you can't hack it anymore." It's like, no, man, I got a business to run. I got to be up in the morning on this meeting. Like,
Exactly.
people's lives depend on
Exactly.
this, not my grades. So
Right. Yep. My livelihood.
yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit different. I don't, I look back and I'm like, I wouldn't feel that odd being, if I was to travel back in time and I was, you know, 20 years old again, and I
Yep.
knew then what I know now. I don't, I'd still go running. I'd still do the same stuff. Like this
Uh-huh.
amount, these 30 years haven't aged me that much. Probably gonna start feeling some of this stuff soon. My bones breaking and joints creaking and all that, but it hasn't happened yet. Haven't need to go. I still don't need reading glasses, which is, thank God.
Well, that's
I
good.
only have a few gray hairs on my sideburns. The rest of the hair's still there. So I've been lucky.
Yeah. You've done something right.
Yeah, yeah. Not many people are over 50 and can read without glasses and all that.
That's
So
true. Like, I had to get these when I turned 40. So,
a lot of people get it. Like the average age is like, yeah, 41. You start to get it, and
yeah.
by 45, everyone needs reading glasses apparently. But
Yeah.
my mom doesn't, and some other people. Apparently, Paul McCartney doesn't need them either. So
Oh, wow.
what? That might be genetic, or like what I've heard from optometrists is the amount of UV light, and because I wore glasses, I had really bad nearsightedness, and
Mm-hmm.
so I had glasses from a very early age, and that blocked the UV.
Oh, okay.
And
So that
so the
ultimately,
elasticity of your lens inside your eye is directly proportional to the hours of UV exposure at certain time. Well, just in aggregate, but also probably during the time that you're young and outside a lot.
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So
I spent a lot of time
I've
outside.
borrowed some time for my eyes. I think they've actually done studies, like farmers and things like that, like people in those
Yeah,
industries. They need reading glasses very, very soon, and cataract operations much, much sooner than people that have indoor jobs or live further up north and things like that.
yeah.
So there's a study that's shown the shift, and it's really about I think it's a crystallization of the lens in the eye. It becomes too rigid because of UV
Okay.
exposure.
Well, yeah.
So it's just a side benefit of the awful, awful nature of being very nearsighted. There's some fringe benefits. I'd trade it all to have proper eyesight growing up, though. We got teased a
Oh,
lot as a nerd, right? And all that kind of stuff.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we survived.
Yeah. So that looks good.
Yeah. I
I like
mean,
it.
I'm just gonna keep this in the state chain slice here. I don't think it because I'm just gonna transition them and persist the information.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that'll be good. Well, I got something to work on then this afternoon.
And so do
Um,
I.
yeah,
I got some other business things to take care of, but then I will get cracking on that new way of specifying slices in my simple framework.
yeah,
Because I really want to, keep things as tiny as possible in the context window, for what code you're looking at to achieve what you want to build, be
yeah.
really easy.
And then would you be able to use like less, I guess, smaller models, or I guess models with smaller context windows because of that
Yeah,
with the same output?
I think so. I mean, it would eat up way fewer tokens, right?
Yeah.
Especially if those properties in that structure that I made are very descriptive,
Hmm.
then you definitely, would not need the context of how that gets called, because there's
Yeah.
the helper functions that are going to instrument iterating through the event handlers and iterate and passing the state to the invariant function and all that. You can actually not add that to your context, how it's going to get run, if you name it well enough, right? So
Yeah.
that's a it's an interesting experiment, because I'm going to see whether it helps or hinders whether I include those functions as part of the context window. And then just imagine you could have that as a pre-prompt in your cursor file. So when you start a new solution, it just, bam, it knows. Like if you paste a picture of the event model, or you serialize the event model to JSON or XML, like Draw.io is XML, and if you have a proper structure in there, it should really just barf out the code that you need for those structures themselves, right?
Yep.
So anyway, well,
No, that's awesome. I'm excited to watch you progress on that.
yeah, and I want to see the live code here. That would be really cool too. And I don't know
Mhm.
what are your plans for the frame, like for the tech stack that you're going to use for this.
Um, I hadn't I hadn't selected one yet. I mean, traditionally,
Yeah.
I'm a .NET developer.
Okay.
But in the last, I don't know, 5 years, I've really been leaning on functional languages. So I started with F sharp, but then when I was at the event modeling conference last fall, I was talking to JP,
Yeah.
and he told me that I really need to check out Elixir. And I
Mm-hmm.
know Yortis is big into Elixir, and I've started playing with that, and I really like it. So I'm not quite sure yet, Adam. Um,
Okay.
I think more people
I
might be
really want to
interested.
also see if this convention moves to other languages like Elixir, because I know that you and Yordis now will, and JP, you'll all be bothering me about Elixir, so I better just get with the program as well and have parts of my solution written and implemented in Elixir. So
Yeah, yeah, it really is a nice language. I really love pattern matching.
yeah,
Uh,
so we'll see how that plays out for my little experiment here. But at the core, what's tying this together is the event stream underneath. I still have to just
yeah,
think about right now I'm passing the token in the URL just so because it's easy for people to track what's going on instead of like a cookie or something else.
mhm,
But there may be other schemes, and I just want to see and make sure that each slice, when you jump to a different stack, um, in the same workflow, because like, hey, you're working in Elixir, I'm working in Node.
mhm,
Let's see how we can alternate between the stacks as we move through the workflow, so the user that has no clue that they're flipping between two stacks. The
yeah,
events are getting stored in the same place, so kind of the same quote unquote database for everything.
yep,
But that would be really cool, because hey, I really like how you do event modeling and all this. I might I might want to prefer to continue working in Node, and you might want to prefer to work in Elixir. But yet we can still continue and make progress and build a solution with no
yeah,
extra costs to having two stacks or more involved in the production of this whole thing. So it's kind of like what serverless is trying to accomplish. People that are implementing serverless solutions
yep,
are making functions in whatever languages they want. And so this paradigm is not new. It's just, we kind of want it to be more pervasive even when you're hosting your own stack and all that,
yeah.
right?
It also makes like hiring easier. Like if you don't
Absolutely, yeah. You
if you
want to
don't
find
care what
an
language,
insurance, someone that's got excellent insurance experience, and you're gonna like turn them away because they're a Ruby developer, right? Like that doesn't
right?
make sense.
Yeah. Like, it was a lot of fun, like, once again at the conference last fall when we built like a simplified version of the unconference software.
Well,
It
there
was
there
fun
will
to do
be another conference in Vancouver, I think, in June. I think
in June.
getting the sponsorship from Current, I think, and then probably Axonic. I'm hoping, and then there'll be a European version in September and October. So that's
Okay,
uh that's the schedule. So June.
June.
I think, yeah, and I think we're gonna try and do that in Portland for you, but I think Current said that it's easier for them to sponsor someone up here, so we might probably
Okay.
go. It'll be an excuse for you to come up again,
Yeah, I
and
love that.
enjoy hopefully the nice weather in June. It's finally like stopped raining. It's still cold, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When does the rain stop for you typically?
it seems like never. This winter's had a couple of days of that were kind of nice. Today's
Yeah.
decent, and yesterday was okay, but that whole week last week was just
Oh
very
yeah, I
gross.
hear you.
Yeah.
I,
uh, all right. Well, anyway, I should.
yeah.
We've chewed up almost 3 hours, which is good.
Wow, that went by fast, man.
I think 2.5 hours. Anyway, I
Yeah.
was a bit late. My
No,
apologies.
I had to get all this new OBS stuff figured out. I never did start my stream, so maybe next time.
Oh yeah, no. Let's do it backwards. Let's do it the other way around, and that'll get you going for this, and should probably like get Yordis on your stream or something, and he'll
That'd be
draw
good. I
an
haven't met
audience, I'm
yours
sure.
yet.
He's been in my stream too often, so he needs to visit yours.
Okay, that sounds good.
Not
I've
that I'm
chatted
pushing
with
him
him
away.
on.
I love the guy and I want to talk to him more, but it would be cool to see you talk about Elixir with him because you know more about it than I do.
I just started last fall, Adam. So I mean,
Wow, that's
I can
you put
read
in
the.
way more hours into it than I have, so it would be really good for to see you guys talk about it.
Sure,
It'd be
but I mean,
painful to see me go through it.
I'm guessing for you, like you can pretty much read any code regardless of the language.
Yes and no. I mean, it still look like if it's something that's entirely new, even like with the scopes and all that, I get thrown through a loop. Even looking at something that I've been working with for a while, like JavaScript.
Uh-huh.
I'm not the brightest guy out there, so I gotta make sure that these frameworks are usable by dummies like me.
Get out of here with that.
Anyway, okay. Well, thanks for this, and
Yeah.
let
Oh,
me go back to hold on, I gotta do a share here again. Uh, I
right.
should really
You
have
just
my where is it?
all the different scenes. Yeah.
Which one is it? Oh, I see. I have to click on your face here. Hold on.
Gotcha.
I think that's it. And then now I can. I'm in the bottom still. Where's my other? Where's my other thing? Locking.
Yeah.
Nope.
I need to configure my green.
Aha! There we are. That's the both of us.
There we go.
So yeah,
Well,
I
this was
gotta I
fun.
gotta work on my little shortcuts here for all this stuff. And
Me
anyway,
too.
it was a pleasure and it was fun to talk about this stuff with you.
Yeah.
I can't
Super
wait to
fun.
see
Thanks
your
for having me on.
implementation. Congrats on
Yeah.
getting the company going. Um,
Appreciate
and
that.
yeah, looking forward to working on projects together with you because I think we can put our minds together and have you know work on projects at the same time. So
Yep.
it'd be really cool. All
I
right,
think so
have a
too.
wonderful day, and
You too.
now you've incentivized me to keep going with my stream. So hopefully, tomorrow or tonight, I'm going to be on again
All right.
doing
Sounds
crazy
good.
stuff.
Let's do it.
All right,
All right. Take
Jake,
care.
take care. Bye.
Bye.